Do you remember Eve, 2003 to 2006? The show once delivered stylish friendships, sharp humor, and youthful ambition on screen. But 22 years later, the real lives behind those characters reveal a far more tragic reality. Broken marriages, life-threatening illnesses, and sudden deaths reshaped their paths in ways no one expected. Join us as we uncover what really happened and honor the legacies they left behind. Natalie Del Reed as Janie Egan's. Natalie Ann Del Reed was born on July 12, 1967, in Alexandria, Louisiana. At 36 years old, Natalie Del Reed played Janie Egan's, the sharp, unfiltered best friend who anchored the humor with truth, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because Janie wasn't decoration. She was the emotional spine that made the comedy land. That visibility, however, came just before a heavier chapter. In 2003, Natalie married Landry Reed, choosing stability and privacy at the exact moment her recognition peaked. While married, she continued working, appearing in projects like Medea's Big Happy Family, 2011, and maintaining the legacy of BAPS. Yet the pace slowed as she prioritized home over hustle. The trade-off brought peace, but also isolation, as opportunities thinned and the pressure of sustaining a career exposure crept into daily life. Then illness reshaped everything. During her marriage, Natalie was diagnosed with colon cancer, a battle she kept fiercely private. Treatments overlapped with family routines. Fear was absorbed silently so her household could remain steady. Work became selective, energy rationed, and even modest financial security couldn't soften the emotional toll of protecting her loved ones. Sadly, Natalie Del Reed died on December 7, 2020, at 53 from colon cancer. Her net worth was estimated $1 million. Eve Jihon Cooper as Shelley Williams. Eve Jihon Cooper was born on November 10, 1978, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 24 years old, Eve played Shelley Williams, the bold, independent fashion designer and central friend of the group, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. This role was crucial because Shelley wasn't a side character. She was the emotional and narrative core of the series. But behind the scenes, Eve herself was quietly reshaping her life. In 2014, Eve married British entrepreneur Maximilian Cooper, instantly stepping into the role of stepmother to his 4 children. Marriage shifted her rhythm at a moment when her career still offered momentum through projects like Barbershop, The Next Cut, and high-profile visibility on The Talk. Balancing a blended family with public life created quiet pressure. Love was real, but it required sacrifice. And that sacrifice slowly changed how often she appeared, how loudly she moved, and how much she was willing to give the industry. Health entered her story through motherhood. Choosing to become pregnant in her 40s placed Eve under constant medical caution, physical exhaustion, and emotional fear. During this period, work slowed deliberately, music releases paused, acting became selective, because survival mattered more than relevance. The experience rewired her priorities, turning once endless drive into careful preservation. Today, Eve is 47 years old, raising her son while maintaining a quieter creative presence between London and the U.S. With an estimated net worth of $10 million, she is secure and lives happily next to her husband and children's. Landry as Rita LaFleur. Germaine Landry was born on July 21, 1973, in Louisiana. At 30 years old, Landry played Rita LaFleur, the glamorous, drama-savvy confidant who added sparkle and tension, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. Rita's role sharpened the show's emotional contrasts and expanded Allie's screen identity beyond beauty. Off-camera, her personal life was about to fracture publicly. In 2004, Ali married Mario Lopez, only to annul the marriage 2 weeks later after discovering his infidelity. The collapse was instant and humiliating, unfolding as headlines while she was still filming and appearing publicly. Even as she remained visible, bolstered by fame from the Doritos Super Bowl campaigns and ongoing work, trust eroded. In 2006, Ali remarried director Alejandro Gomez Monteverde, and motherhood followed, bringing purpose alongside vulnerability. During this marriage, she balanced selective acting, Eve, guest work like Criminal Minds, with building a life centered on family, while absorbing devastating trauma when close relatives were kidnapped and murdered in Mexico. The psychological impact was profound. Safety felt conditional, ambition recalibrated, and work became secondary to survival and healing. Today, Ali Landry is 52 years old, living deliberately with her family and focusing on wellness entrepreneurship. With an estimated net worth of $6 million, she has stability earned through rupture and repair. Jason George as J.T. Hunter. Jason Winston. George was born on February 9, 1972, in Virginia Beach, Virginia. At 31 years old, Jason George played J.T. Hunter, Shelley Williams's on-again, off-again boyfriend, a physical therapist whose charm masked deep hesitation, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because JT's uncertainty mirrored real emotional paralysis, making him quietly relatable rather than heroic. That realism followed Jason beyond the sitcom, into a life already anchored by commitment. Long before fame intensified, Jason married Vandana Khanna in 1999, building a marriage that would absorb years of professional pressure. After Eve, he balanced steady television work with family life, moving between projects like Sunset Beach and Off Center while preparing for a much larger leap. When Grey's Anatomy arrived, the rhythm of his life changed completely, yet the marriage remained a stabilizing force rather than a casualty of success. The strain grew when his character Ben Warren evolved, crossing from surgeon into firefighter and anchoring Station 19. The role demanded physical conditioning, night shoots, and relentless schedules, layered on top of fatherhood to 3 children. Alongside appearances in series like Mistresses and recurring guest roles across network television, Jason had to protect his health and his marriage with the same discipline he brought to his performances. Nothing collapsed, but nothing was effortless either. Now 53 years old in 2025, Jason George continues as a fixture of primetime television, still working steadily while raising his family alongside Vandana. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his story isn't loud or scandalous. Brian Hooks as Nick Delaney. Brian Hooks was born on July 27, 1973, in Bakersfield, California. At 30 years old, Brian Hooks played Nick Delaney, JT's loyal best friend, clumsy in love, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. Nick mattered because he humanized the male side of the series, turning insecurity into laughter audiences recognized. When the show ended, Brian's career entered a far more fragile phase. He continued acting in comedies like Soul Plane, 2004, leaning into humor at a time when mainstream roles were becoming harder to secure. Earlier success with 3 Strikes still echoed, but Hollywood's attention moved quickly, and the gap between recognition and opportunity widened. To survive, Brian shifted control into his own hands. He poured himself into low-budget independent films, producing, directing, and starring in projects like Dead Tone and Malibuti. These years demanded constant hustle, long hours, financial risk, and creative isolation. But they also kept him working when visibility was scarce. Today, Brian Hooks is 52 years old, working increasingly behind the camera and mentoring younger creatives through his production efforts. With an estimated net worth of $800,000, his journey feels quieter than it once promised. Shawn Maguire as Donovan Brink. Shawn Maguire was born on April 18, 1976, in London, England. At 27 years old, Shawn Maguire played Donovan Brink, the sharp-tongued British bartender and trusted friend in the group, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because it repositioned him for American audiences, shifting him from former UK teen idol to a credible adult sitcom presence. That transition quietly set the stage for everything that followed. Marriage arrived before stability fully settled. In 2012, Shawn married Tanya Flynn, and almost immediately life accelerated. While building a family, he committed to physically demanding and emotionally layered roles, most notably Robin Hood in Once Upon a Time, where long shooting schedules and international fandom collided with early fatherhood. Around the same period, work on projects like Meet the Spartans and later The Class reflected a career still searching for balance between visibility and longevity, even as domestic life demanded consistency. As their children arrived, 3 in total, the cost of ambition became clearer. Shawn continued pushing forward with darker, more complex material, such as The Magicians and Timeless, followed by procedural intensity on SWAT. Each role required reinvention, long absences, and constant emotional switching, while marriage required grounding and restraint. Now, at 49 years old, Shawn Maguire lives a carefully calibrated life between family and craft. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his story isn't about burnout or collapse. It's about endurance. Reggie Gaskins as Marty Egan's. Reginald L. Gaskins was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1969. At around 35 years old, Reggie Gaskins played Marty Egan's, Janie Egan's husband, a grounded, soft-spoken presence, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. Though a supporting role, Marty mattered because he represented stability inside a world built on conflict and comedy. When the cameras stopped, Reggie quietly stepped into a more demanding personal chapter. Reggie poured himself into independent storytelling, a choice that carried emotional and financial weight. During these years, he wrote, directed, and starred in films like Restraining Order and later The Lying Truth, projects born from necessity as much as passion. As health and endurance became part of the equation, Reggie shifted how he worked rather than how much he cared. Theater, guest roles, and smaller productions replaced the grind of chasing visibility, allowing him to remain present at home while still creating. Teaching foster youth through Kids in the Spotlight became more than outreach. It became healing, grounding his identity beyond applause. The work sustained him emotionally when recognition did not. Now, Reggie Gaskins is about 56 years old, continuing to work behind the camera while mentoring young artists. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, his legacy is not loud, but it is lasting. Sharif Atkins as Grant. Sharif Atkins was born on January 29, 1975, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At 30 years old, Sharif Atkins played Grant, Shelley Williams's boyfriend, a composed, emotionally steady contrast to her fast-paced world, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because Grant embodied maturity in a series driven by volatility. For Sharif, it arrived during a period of transition rather than arrival. At the same time, Sharif was already known for ER, where he portrayed Dr. Michael Gallant, a role that demanded emotional depth and physical intensity. The overlap between ER and Eve stretched his personal life thin, with long shoots and shifting storylines competing for time and energy. Career momentum was strong, but it required constant recalibration to protect relationships off-screen. Marriage later brought grounding. In 2014, Sharif married Bethany Hotchkiss, and fatherhood followed, reshaping how he approached work. During this period, he leaned into steady, character-driven roles like Clinton Jones on White Collar and later Boom Boom Gates on NCIS, Hawaii. These projects offered consistency, but also demanded endurance, years of travel, procedural repetition, and emotional availability that quietly tested family balance. Today, Sharif Atkins is 50 years old, continuing selective television work while prioritizing home life. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his career reflects longevity rather than spectacle. Daphne Reed as Frances Hunter. Daphne Etta Reed was born on July 13, 1948, in New York City. At 55 years old, Daphne Reed played Frances Hunter, J.T. Hunter's mother, a firm, watchful matriarch, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because it shifted her presence from comedy into consequence, grounding the show with lived experience rather than punchlines. That gravity came from a life already shaped by decades of discipline, partnership, and reinvention. Daphne married actor Tim Reed in 1982, and together they built a rare creative union that blurred the line between personal and professional life. She balanced acting with substantial work behind the scenes, co-owning and operating New Millennium Studios in Virginia while still carrying the cultural weight of her earlier roles in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Frank's Place. As time passed, Daphne redirected her energy rather than retreating. She expanded into photography, fashion design, and mentorship, while continuing to appear selectively on screen in series like Let's Stay Together, and later returning to the Fresh Prince universe in Bel-Air, 2022. A moment that quietly closed a long cultural loop. These projects reflected intention, not necessity, shaped by a life where stability protected creativity instead of consuming it. Now, at 77 years old, Daphne Reed continues a measured creative life rooted in partnership, autonomy, and purpose. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, her story isn't one of decline or disappearance. Jasmine Lewis as Danny. Jasmine Lewis was born on March 22, 1967, in Cleveland, Ohio. At about 28 years old, Jasmine Lewis played Danny, a confident, stylish friend orbiting the main group, offering clarity and calm rather than chaos, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role fit naturally into her career. It arrived just before her life demanded a heavier rhythm. Her personal life carried transition. After an early marriage ended, Jasmine married Brian Kelly in 2005, stepping into motherhood while still working. At that time, she delivered one of her most meaningful performances in Tracy Townsend, 2005, a role that earned her Best Acting awards and validated her depth at a time when visibility mattered less than truth. At the same time, her work in the barbershop films kept her recognizable, even as she chose projects more carefully. Marriage and family reshaped her creative output. Producing began to matter as much as performing, allowing her to stay connected to storytelling without sacrificing presence at home. Smaller roles, behind-the-scenes work, and music projects replaced the constant push for screen time, turning ambition inward. The shift was recalibration, learning how to sustain both art and life. Today, Jasmine Lewis is about 49 years old, balancing acting, producing, and family with intention. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her journey reflects endurance rather than excess. LaMarr as Coleman Phillip. Louis LaMarr was born on January 24, 1967, in Los Angeles, California. At 36 years old, LaMarr played Coleman, a witty, observant friend on the periphery of the group, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role worked because Coleman sharpened it, giving the ensemble rhythm and contrast. That steadiness reflected a career already balancing many lanes at once. Marriage anchored his private life as his professional world multiplied. Married to Dory Elizabeth Goldhirsch, Phil built a family while his voice became everywhere. Futurama as Hermes Conrad, and Samurai Jack as the title character running alongside on-camera work like Spider-Man 2. The workload was invisible but immense, sessions stacking, schedules colliding, presence required in rooms no one saw. Stability at home made that pace survivable. As the years progressed, the center of gravity shifted decisively toward voice acting. Projects like Static Shock, Justice League, and later Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends demanded consistency rather than spotlight, rewarding endurance over spectacle. The choice narrowed public visibility while deepening influence, turning Phil into a cornerstone of animation without the volatility of constant reinvention. It was success that hummed instead of roared. Today, Phil LaMarr is 58 years old, continuing prolific voice work across animation and games. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his career reads expansive, yet controlled. Penny Johnson. Gerald as Beverly Williams. Penny Johnson Gerald was born on March 14, 1961, in Baltimore, Maryland. At 42 years old, Penny Johnson Gerald played Beverly Williams, Shelley Williams' mother, a composed, morally grounded presence who raised the emotional stakes whenever she appeared, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because Beverly represented accountability, not indulgence. She wasn't there to soften conflict, but to confront it. That authority echoed a life built on discipline and longevity. Marriage shaped her rhythm long before Eve. Married to Graylin Gerald since 1983, Penny balanced family with demanding work, moving steadily between projects that required emotional restraint rather than spectacle. During this period, she carried the dramatic afterglow of 24, where her portrayal of Sherry Palmer revealed her capacity for power, manipulation, and psychological complexity. That dramatic credibility sustained her through a wide range of work that favored substance over visibility. Alongside Eve, she appeared in serious ensemble-driven projects such as The Larry Sanders Show and Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, where her role as Cassidy Yates required warmth, authority, and emotional intelligence in equal measure. These performances reinforced her reputation as an actress trusted with moral weight. Work continued to evolve alongside commitment. Her authoritative presence expanded into new genres with Castle, where she portrayed Captain Victoria Iron Gates, a role defined by command and restraint rather than likability. Later, The Orville offered a more introspective authority as Dr. Claire Finn, blending science fiction with emotional realism. Voice work in The Lion King added a generational echo to her career, extending her influence beyond the screen. Today, Penny Johnson Gerald is 64 years old, still working selectively while teaching, producing, and mentoring with intention. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, her story lands not with noise, but with quiet force. Richard Gant as Andrew Hunter. Richard Edward Gant was born on March 10, 1944, in San Francisco, California. At about 59 years old, Richard Gant played Andrew Hunter, J.T. Hunter's father, a rigid, intimidating patriarch whose authority weighed heavily on his son, in Eve, 2003 to 2006. The role mattered because Andrew Hunter embodied generational pressure rather than comfort, a figure who judged more than he listened. It echoed his career built on power, silence, and control. Away from the sitcom, Gant's life was shaped by a long marriage to Arlene Burks Gant, with whom he raised 2 children while maintaining an exhausting character-actor career. During these years, he carried the legacy of unforgettable authority figures, most notably George Washington Duke in Rocky V and the morally corroded Hostetler in HBO's Deadwood. These roles followed him everywhere, reinforcing an image of strength that rarely allowed softness. As age settled in, his performances grew heavier, more inward. In Men of a Certain Age, he portrayed a father confronting aging, regret, and diminished power, themes that mirrored his own stage of life far more closely than his earlier antagonists. Guest appearances in shows like Mr. Iglesias and NCIS, Los Angeles continued, while he also co-founded Pan-Africanist, signaling a turn toward cultural legacy rather than screen dominance. The work never stopped, but the spotlight narrowed, replaced by responsibility and quiet endurance. In 2025, Richard Gant is 81 years old, regarded as one of television's most dependable embodiments of authority. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his life reads not as a rise or fall, but a long, disciplined march. 22 years later, the laughter from Eve still echoes. But the lives behind those smiles changed in ways few of us ever saw. Some chose family over fame, some carried quiet sacrifices behind long-running success, and others left us far too soon, reminding us how fragile time really is. So now the question is yours. Which Eve cast member's journey surprised you the most? And whose story broke your heart? If this look back moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the lives Hollywood never shows. Thank you for watching and see why.